The elves, immortal, wisest and fairest of all beings.
Wood elves. They're leaving Middle-earth, never to return.
All light is sacred to the Eldar, but wood elves love best the light of the stars.
Elves are hard. Elves are probably the hardest of all the characters to bring to life on screen.
Frodo.
It's almost like they live between worlds, that they can see beyond the shores of this world.
I have walked there sometimes, beyond the forest and up into the night.
It's a quality that you're looking for that's almost impossible to define. It's impossible to define. It's a sort of elegance, it's a beauty, it's an agelessness.
I remember asking Peter in the first film, what do elves do? How does one be an elf? Because they have this otherness, this wisdom and this grace and a timelessness that is at once human but not human.
As Professor Tolkien describes them, they're incredibly graceful. There's a beauty about them. There's an otherworldliness about them. So you need to make these characters feel real and ancient and grounded in this mythology.
The work of Tolkien's heart was his writing about the elves, and they are a great part of his whole picture of Middle-earth, the most important part.
He started with creating the Elven languages in those beautiful calligraphies. Of course, for Professor Tolkien, language is the basis of everything. It informs his entire world. And from the Elven language then came a culture that would have created beauty wherever they go, in their buildings, in their poetry. They are creatures of light and enlightenment. And so for him, the elves were the soul of Middle-earth.
The elves, as they appear throughout ancient mythology, were originally thought of as more or less human-sized creatures, but more powerful than humans. A lot like the Irish tradition of the Tuatha De Danann, the great fairy folk of Ireland who had been great warriors.
The elves demand respect in the ancient legends and the ancient myths. They're much wiser than human beings.
But ultimately, starting around 1600, people just stopped taking them seriously. Shakespeare was writing things like A Midsummer Night's Dream, and from that point on, we see the elves diminishing down into little fairies, dancing among the flowers. This more or less reached its peak with works like Peter Pan from very early 20th century literature.
You think Tinkerbell, little flimsy creature with wings. Well, this was the Victorian and Edwardian age in which Tolkien grew up. There was a whole school of fairy painting, which was immensely popular right up to the First World War. But Tolkien, as he read his way more and more into ancient literature, he thought that the whole idea of elves and of fairies had been diminished and downgraded. And I think that really bugged Tolkien, and he wanted to go back to what he saw of as a nobler conception.
Tolkien's elves were an amalgamation of all of the reading and research that Tolkien had done and all of his knowledge and love for ancient myth and legend.
He's a kind of mythic Sherlock Holmes who can put the clues together in a way that nobody else ever has. For instance, there's the Old Norse fragments about what kind of elves there are. It says there are Ljósalfar, light elves, and Dúkalfar, which are dark elves. Well, this caused immense confusion to many scholars. So Tolkien's brilliant solution to this was to say, all right, let's stop thinking about what color the elves are. The real difference is there are elves who've seen the light and elves who have not seen the light and remained in darkness. And in this case, the light is the light in Valinor, the undying land. Some elves, like Galadriel, went all the way to Valinor, and they are the high elves. They grew steadily wiser and more powerful. But others never got past Mirkwood. They stayed in what was then Greenwood the Great, and those are the wood elves.
The way Tolkien kind of describes them is as less noble and wise in body and in spirit.
The feasting people were wood elves, of course. They differed from the high elves of the West and were more dangerous and less wise.
It was actually quite fun to finally get to the Woodland Elves and to be able to show a slightly more earthy race of elves, the Sylvan Elves.
You know, you're reading the book, and I think my enduring memory of the Sylvan Elves from the book, bit that I couldn't believe, was they got drunk.
There stood barrels and barrels and barrels, for the Wood Elves, and especially their king, were very fond of wine.
Say what you like about our ill-tempered king, but he has excellent taste in wine.
They are, I guess you would say, a lesser race in a way. Perhaps not as high in culture and art and music, and yet in love with this world, invested in the little streams and the great trees.
In the book, The Hobbit, the Sylvan elves are almost faceless. There's no personality to hang on to. But that doesn't work for a film, of course. It never will. You have to bring character, because how does an audience care about them? And that was the pivotal role that Tauriel played.
We needed to show you what a Sylvan Elf might be, but first and foremost, quite honestly, we created the character of Tauriel because we're going to have 13 old dwarves with long beards. We have Gandalf, of course, Bilbo. We've got Legolas, Thranduil, and we have Bard. You really feel the weight of that. It becomes a very blokey story quite quickly.
These stories really do lack female characters, particularly The Hobbit.
There's no girls here. This is very This could have been a fucking nightmare. That aspect of it. It could have been a nightmare because of the testosterone and because of the maleness flying around.
We did look at where the opportunities lay for creating a good, strong female character that could have her own story. And we looked at a few interesting places where that could happen. Could she be a hobbit?
We thought about the idea of female characters. We thought about somebody in Lake Town. I mean, we did consider different ideas way back at the beginning.
We didn't just want to create her for the sake of creating a female character. She needed to have a purpose in the storytelling. I think it was Fran who said she should be an elf.
It just is an interesting idea because then we thought we could explore the idea of an elven female character who is not Galadriel. She's not the wise seer. Take it in directions that would be kind of fun as filmmakers.
Originally, her name in the audition scripts was Tauriel, which means starlight, but she needed to be more earthy. So we wrote down a whole bunch of names in Elvish and we sent them to David Salo. He does all our translations. And one of the names that we wrote down was Daughter of Mirkwood. So when it came back as Tauriel and he said it and you heard it, and it was just like, oh, that's it, forget about it, that's her name.
Tauriel may not literally exist in the books, in the sense that her character is never described as we see her on screen, but there are definitely antecedents of her character in Tolkien.
People always say there are no female characters in Tolkien's stories, but of course you have the Lady Galadriel, who is the most powerful of them all in many ways. And he was never averse to female characters fighting. Look at the Lady Eowyn in Lord of the Rings. She was a warrior princess.
I am no man.
Examples that spring to my mind are Luthien. She rode straight into Morgoth, who was like the big bad version even of Sauron. Similarly, you've got Idril, who is Elrond's grandmother. Her sword is the sword that Arwen carries.
If you want him, come and claim him.
There's certainly nothing in the Tolkien kind of mythology that is sexist in the way that, you know, the elvish warriors are all blokes and the women stay home and cook. I mean, it's not like that. But at the same time, we didn't want Tauriel just to be Xena warrior princess. You know, she had to have more complexity and more interest.
Over the months, Tauriel's character evolved, and we did a lot of design work that involved the leaf mail. Very fortunately, I sit as a judge on this amazing event in New Zealand that happens every year called the World of Wearable Arts. And it was on stage I saw this dragon light woven out of leaf mail and fine chain mail costume that was so beautiful and so inspiring, created by a New Zealand artist called Eve Gilliland. So I approached her and asked her if she'd consider coming to the workshop and sharing it with us.
It has an amazing movement quality to it. You can see that it's just sticking to the form.
Yeah, no, it's
fantastic. The model looked amazing.
It's fantastically
I love
fitting.
this, where see that movement there with those little jaws?
Yeah, that's
and
terrific.
On stage,
that's
that looked
terrific.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's almost the sort of movement that we want the elves and the trees to have, isn't it? That kind of unholy movement.
We then hired Eve, and she worked tirelessly for many, many months working with this technique. This is at a similar time that Nick was evolving his ideas, and so he started to bring Eve's design influence into his drawings.
So we wanted to try and incorporate that into the elf designs because they felt like they sat right with that culture. But ultimately we ended up pushing that scale mail idea as sort of Tauriel's more signature look.
Eve helped the team learn how to put these garments together to achieve this amazing body of work.
There's been a team of people doing this very, very fine embroidery and then putting this shifting colour underneath it. Peter described this to us as almost a kinetic fabric that when she moves, it moves with her, but when she comes to rest, it settles and comes to rest almost like he described it as a ninja assassin of the forest.
We got to shoot tests. We shot some of them in the back courtyard of our workshop. We had Kate Venables, one of our costumers, jumping around in this stuff.
It was in many ways the ideal solution because we were looking for a way to armour her without covering her in armour. And it allowed her to still have her feminine grace and her elven grace that was just so necessary to that character.
And then we started casting. In Tauriel's case, we needed her to be someone who could be brave enough to take on a character who is not actually part of the book. And you know, it's hard to find the right person who can do that. And we had met and known Evangeline previously, so she came to mind.
When I received a message that Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson were trying to get a hold of me, I was laid up in bed post-labor, unable to, I was bedridden. I couldn't get up on my own.
So Fran and I were both sitting there thinking, she's never going to say yes. She's never going to say yes. She's just got this baby.
The prospect of working at that point wasn't the most attractive thing in the world to me. But when I was asked to play an elf in The Hobbit, my favorite book of all time, I couldn't say no.
As soon as Evangeline was cast, she's got a very distinctive look. And once you've got the actress cast, it definitely informs the design process a lot more. Kind of makes it more concrete and you kind of see what works and what doesn't a bit clearer.
When I arrived, the look that I was supposed to embody was depicted in a graphic sketch. I don't look like that graphic image that I came to see when I first arrived. I wish I did. I saw the graphic image and I went, oh, that's what you're gonna make me look like. That's amazing. And then they put the costume on me and I looked like a female dwarf. Wow. I mean, it didn't help that I was only 3.5 months post-pregnancy. I was so stocky. It was horrible. I didn't look elegant. I didn't look graceful. I didn't look elvish at all. I looked like a little dwarf.
It's not flowing in the way that it did in the drawing, for example, for whatever reason. Something that really was like liquid coming, that was always the hope, that it would have this kind of liquidy flow.
It didn't work, so we discarded it and started again.
So the head of wardrobe sat down and she made a design and she tried it on me and we knew we were on the right track.
Tauriel's costume incorporated 2 colorways of this tree bark fabric I got, and she had a coat of that green, and over the top of that she wore a very fitted brown leather corset, and down the front of it we had these laser cut leaves. I'm quite fond of layering fabrics so you get a glint of something else, and particularly on the elves I wanted them to have a slight magical feeling where you kind of go, whoa, what is that exactly?
In all the sort of long-legged movements they had me doing, it's nice to see the legs come through.
Tauriel also had to be distinct from the hunter elves so that when you saw a whole bunch of them together and she was standing amongst them, you could pick her out because she's a main character. And one way that we kind of jumped on picking her out from the others was with her hair.
And she had hair sort of down past her calves. I sometimes think Peter does these things to see if I can do it or it can be done. There's always this challenge going on. So I looked at it and I went, right, okay, I can work out how this has got to be done, so we had to make a wig with very long hair, and then we had to extend it.
Yes, there's girls in Russia that grow their hair long and they sell it. It's their job. They just sit at home having to sort of sit there and wait for their hair to grow. And they sort of read books and magazines and eat and drink and they sort of wait till their hair gets long. Yes, it's a profession.
To get her hair as long as we wanted it, we can't get hair that long. So what we've done is we've cheated by this is the wig, and then underneath is another piece here, which extends the length, and then when it's put on the head, the whole lot is combed together so as to form this one big, long tail.
I love my hair. I love Tauriel's wig. I love the color. I'm so excited. I've always wanted to play a redhead.
The color originally was, I would call it a chestnut brown. And in the process of us doing our show and tells, it got redder and redder and redder.
I said I'd love to see it a little bit more poppy red.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you could put a little bit more into it. I mean, I can certainly go with that too, because it's not quite as red as the artwork.
At one point, Peter said, no, just more red. And I went, really? Okay. Okay, fine.
I mean, that colour there, if you can see it, that colour's not bad. It's not quite the same.
I could do a bit more on the front.
Maybe.
And in the end, this wig and the hairpiece had 9 separate lots of tinfoil highlights.
You have dyes called violet, tomato, and grass.
Yeah, we do indeed. We did it with thousands of little fine highlights and all different colours, so it looks like a natural colour, so it doesn't look like a dyed colour. And so that's how we ended up with this bright red.
I'm a lucky elf. A lucky little elf. Right, Hill? A lucky little elf. I have the biggest ears out of all the elves in all the movies ever.
Just in case you haven't noticed.
They were lovely because they wrapped right against her head. The one thing I don't think you want is them sticking out.
There's a rare opportunity occasionally that comes along when there's actually been some filming done and you can look at it and go, okay, we're going to add something here. And we had that chance with Tauriel and Legolas to offer a second iteration on her costume.
When we first saw them in the realm of Mirkwood, there's a need for them to be in a very much a stealth-like sort of camouflage situation. But now it's actually about going out and leaving the realm.
It was really Leslie Burks-Harding that came through and found the essential ingredients and found the lines that we needed for it. And it was she that really designed that costume.
What they needed was a travelling costume, something that could be elegant, simple, fluid. She needs to be able to move in it really well.
The new elements that ended up being introduced, I think in many ways recalled Arwen's riding costume.
It was a beautiful garment. It had everything about it that they wanted this to be, but obviously it needed to be a bit different. This is so much more beautiful.
Yes,
When I put it on, I felt like now I'm Tauriel.
Dirachi wifing. Dirachi.
Elvish, rock on.
The use of Elvish was important because it lends an authenticity to the world that you're trying to bring to life.
Elvish is an extensive language system. It's got grammar and syntax. There's a very clear pronunciation guide that Tolkien himself gave us.
Okay, Evie, here we go. Ready and action.
Within the Tolkien world, we have 2 different types of Elvish. Sindarin, that is their common speech, so it is the everyday communication.
In Gun and Leor.
And then there's Quenya, which is ancient Elvish.
Nino Hithaglia Lasto Bethar, Rimonin Noinen Lanin.
It predated Sindarin. It has a timeless formal quality to the language itself, kind of like Latin in a way. And it's used, particularly in these movies, for spells, for incantations.
Now, I'll never forget that Elvish incantation because, I mean, I just said it over and over and over and over and over again. Men no nin na hon, yelia dan nenanin, hon leethon gurth. Yelia dan nenanin, hon leethon gurth. And I'm sure every dwarf in the room could recite that one for you, too, because they had to hear it like 100 times at least. Men no nin na non, yelia dan nenanin. Hon leethon gurth, men no hinna non, yelia dan nenanin, hon leethon.
Very good.
How do you draw them?
From the back, it's like it's invisible.
We spent quite a lot of time thinking about how weapons can be used. We all sort of looked at what had been done on the original films. We wanted to come up with Elvish weapons that felt in the same kind of family as what had been done on Lord of the Rings. The idea with these weapons is that they can actually sit across the back of the arm, which enables you to have a very different fighting action.
Her two daggers resembled kukri knives. So Nepaline kukri knives, they actually bend, they sort of concave and they don't go straight. We wanted to incorporate it, but make it her own and just how she would post it up and have one pointing down one arm and having one going out the other side.
I love my daggers, but if I'm honest, I have dagger envy.
Legolas and Tauriel, who has the better weapons? Of course Legolas does. That's a ridiculous question.
Oh, he's got his knives out again, guys.
He's got his knives out. I've got my old LOTR faithful on my back, which could not be improved upon, is what we decided. You cannot improve upon perfection.
If I had to choose, I would take Legolas's daggers over Tauriel's daggers. But I do like the look of mine. I think they're pretty.
So what they've done for Tauriel is good, actually. Pretty good, but not quite as good.
Keep it as a promise.
What we had with Tauriel was a slightly different elf. She has a great curiosity of other races, of the world outside.
She literally hasn't been anywhere. I mean, Tauriel's probably one of the younger elves, 1,000 years old, maybe 1,347 years old, I don't know. But, you know, she isn't as old as Legolas or Thranduil.
And she engages and ultimately falls in love with a dwarf of all people. It was a nod, in a way, towards the love that Gimli felt for Galadriel. It was just one of those wonderfully beautiful moments that Professor Tolkien wrote so effortlessly.
And what gift would a dwarf ask of the elves?
Nothing.
The other members of the company get their various valuable gifts from Galadriel.
Thank you, my lady.
But Gimli says he'd just like a strand of hair, which is really, as I say, a kind of romantic thing to do. And you would expect him to ask for something tangible, but he asks for something precious instead.
It does go back to chivalric romance, like the Arthurian stories. It's a personal connection that she acknowledges he is her knight, and that he will go and do deeds in her name. And he does.
I asked her for one hair from her golden head. She gave me 3.
And so we created a love story between Kili and Tauriel. But we had an instinct that you could never push the story too far.
Aye, aye! You got the timing wrong. Bugger!
In that initial spider fighting scene, some of us felt that it should be totally icy, a dwarf meeting an elf, and business as usual. And then there were some of us who thought, no, there should be an instant, unexplainable chemistry.
I have heard many tales of the beauty of the elves.
And I have heard many tales of your kind.
What do they say?
They say never trust a dwarf. I was very relieved that scene got cut from the film because I don't feel that we ever on the day came to a good resolution. But by the time we get to the cell scene, we were all very much in agreement that this is a great moment for romance to start to take seat. The stone in your hand, what is it?
My mother gave it to me so I'd remember my promise. That I will come back to her.
In terms of when and how and where those two characters might kiss, might actually have that moment. I think I put it on the lake shore. We trusted the actors to know exactly where it should go.
And then what do we think about this kiss moment?
Have we earned a kiss? I don't know if we've earned a kiss.
I think I earned it.
I said, Aiden, no offense to you, I'm not trying to get out of kissing you, but it just felt to me like it was premature.
I think Evangeline knew exactly when it should happen. And it's when she understood that what she felt had been real. And now she had to let it go.
This is gonna ruin the most romantic scene in the movie. But I have been waiting for 3 years to tell this story, and I'm gonna tell it. To understand the sort of physical dynamics of that scene, I'm supposed to delicately sort of lean over him and kiss him. Well, to reach his face over his barrel chest, I'm almost hanging upside down. I'm trying to reach his lips, but I'm crying. And one take, I came up from giving him his kiss, and there was this string of my snot running from his lips to my nose.
Terrific, great stuff, great stuff. Oh, hang on there.
Finally, they called cut, and Peter said, "Don't worry, we'll get it in post." So embarrassing.
Even the latest version of Photoshop, you can't quite replace a good old-fashioned pencil. A fine selection of dwarves and elves. Getting closer if you want.
Fran and Pete had spoken about reprising the little vignettes on the end titles, as we did at the end of Return of the King. And I said, it's brilliant. And so, of course, it had to be Alan Lee and John Howe, because they can draw those characters better than anyone.
We have 32 altogether. Given the dearth of feminine characters, there were only 2. So we split them up by nationality.
John did my portrait because he was Canadian and I'm Canadian. Seeing Tauriel's portrait at the end, it was a total surprise, and I was really touched by it. It meant a lot to me because my character wasn't in the book and was very controversial. It sort of felt like an affirmation. I guess the character, Tauriel, had sort of earned her place in this world.